Well, hello and welcome to the small business briefing. As you can see, I'm not in my normal spot. In fact, I don't know, maybe I should have come up with a better background in this. Actually up in Marquette, Michigan. So reporting from Marquette. Operation Action UP does an awards program for some awesome small businesses. SBAM this time of year, SBAM has participated in the past in this particular program, but especially this year because Mark and Liz Ware, who are the owners of Mission Point Resort, are one of the award winners this year and receiving an award. So up with them on the campus of Northern Michigan University. So my name is Brian Calley, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan. Great to be with you today. So thank you for tuning in. And my co-conspirator in this organization is Sarah Miller. And Sarah, we've got a pretty cool tradition here on Thursdays. We welcome a new member. Who do we got today?
Yes, I love this tradition. It's so good to spotlight some of our new members who have joined us over the past couple of weeks. And today we are welcoming Sales Service Solutions from Grand Blanc. The owner is Michael Deenan. So welcome to Michael and his team. And of course, we are welcoming this member on behalf of our sponsor, Marana Group, which is a family-owned business in Kalamazoo. They do data, document, and distribution solutions. So thank you to Marana Group and welcome Sales Service Solutions. So Brian, we got some news yesterday from MDHHS that mask guidance is once again being updated.
Yeah, and actually, this one kind of surprised me a little bit. When we were talking not too long ago, and you'd asked, when could we expect things to move? And I said spring. I thought that that probably in the springtime is when we would see some of the recommendations. There's not a lot of rules are for healthcare, but in terms of the guidance, the state had held on to now since fourth quarter of last year, guidance that recommended masking in indoor spaces and in schools, and they have removed that guidance now, and it happened a little earlier than I was expecting. So I usually say when I was right, and so I guess I should say when I was wrong. It happened a little bit earlier than I was expecting. So like here, I'm at Northern Michigan University. A lot of colleges require masks here, so I'm alone in this room. But here's my Stormy Kromer mask that I'm utilizing today. But I would expect that institutions like this that are still following those types of rules would probably start to back off on those. Schools have started to move away from them already anyway, because it was guidance before, not a hard and fast rule. But there are still rules for healthcare and in assisted living facilities, nursing homes, still masking requirements that are in effect, and those are actual regulations, as opposed to this guidance that is now being backed off on and done so, a couple months earlier than I would have expected them to move.
Yes, I think from reading the press release, it's really kind of shifting the onus to those of us who feel like we might need to add a little bit of extra protection based on our own situation or our families, and choose to use your mask where applicable. But what I also liked about this release is they're talking about the future, and they identified kind of 3 phases about COVID right now, and they're breaking it into a response phase, recovery, and readiness. So instead of always having to be at this kind of readiness stage, we're going to look at the surge, we're going to look at potential waves, respond accordingly. When that's over, we're in the recovery. There'll be just basic monitoring of conditions that might lead to future surges. And then again, the readiness. So it's kind of the cyclical, situation that we're looking at, and as we move into the endemic phase of COVID and just learning to live with the implications. So in other news, earlier this week, we shared that we applauded the passage of tax cuts in the Senate. What are those tax cuts? And then what did the governor say about the potential for this to make it all the way through to her desk?
There are a lot of different tax cut ideas on the table now because government has so much to operate with. I think when I first came to office, well, certainly when I started in the governor's office as lieutenant governor with Rick Snyder, I think the size of the state government's budget was around 47 or 48 billion dollars. The one that the governor just proposed for this upcoming fiscal year was more than 74 billion dollars. So there's a lot of excess revenue around, some directly from the federal government, but a lot of it is from kind of indirectly from the federal government spending. So stimulus money goes to people spend the money, more income or more sales taxes, sales paid into the state, revenues way up, and this cycle that's been ongoing for a while. So state government has big surpluses. When state government has surplus, then naturally you're going to have some conversations about tax cuts. The governor started the debate over what would be the appropriate tax cuts in her budget presentation, saying, we should do some senior retiree pension income tax reductions, and the earned income tax credit being another one to provide essentially a refundable credit for low income workers as being kind of a central piece of the governor's proposal. What the Senate said was, hey, retiree exemptions, increasing those income tax exemptions, great. So they kind of adopted the concept, approached it in a different way, but still said, yeah, that makes sense. But also said, let's reduce the rates. And so on the individual income tax, they proposed moving it from 4.25 to 3.9%. And then on the corporate income tax, moving it from 6% to 3.9%, essentially to have 3.9% to be the income tax rate, no matter how you're organized. Now, most people watching this briefing pay the individual income tax rate, 4.25%, on your business income. Because you're a pass-through entity, on your federal return, all your business income passes through to your personal adjusted gross income, that carries over to your state return. That's what you pay your tax on. Some small businesses are still C Corps, not most, but some. They pay 6%. What the Senate is saying is, let's make them all 3.9%. And it's a pretty, overall, it's a it'll end up being, once fully implemented and in place for a few years, it'll reduce state government revenue by about $2.5 billion per year. And so it's a big, it's a big one overall in terms of, if you look back at historical tax cuts, pretty big one. Not surprisingly, the governor was, when she was visiting with an organization in the Lansing area just yesterday, said that she does not support a tax cut like that, would rather it be more targeted and focus in on the areas where she wanted to put the tax cuts. So smaller, maybe $700 million in tax cuts, $700 to $800 million in tax cuts, but really targeted at low-income individuals, giving them a refundable credit. So most low-income individuals on the income tax side, the credits wipe out their tax liability. So this would be so they get a refund, or they get more money back, even if they don't have any tax liability. And by the way, that concept, earned income tax credit, giving a tax credit to people with lower income as an incentive to work, is something that started with Ronald Reagan back in the 1980s. And it's so the concept is a solid concept, the idea that you reward work. And so the earned income tax credit is something that we at SBAM think is an interesting idea to explore. But the governor wants it more limited, $700 to $800 million, targeted toward a couple groups, low-income individuals and seniors. What the Senate is saying, now we'd rather do an across-the-board rate cut to make the environment better for everybody. Of course, we like that. I mean, the idea, you got this extra juice there in the state budget. They can afford to take a hit and reduce their budgets. You might as well make the environment more competitive for everybody across the board, and rather than just kind of zeroing in a few areas. Now, where are they going to land? Well, good question. That's the $2 billion question. But there is, I mean, it'll be somewhere in between. They'll negotiate it. The governor will come up, Senate and the House will come down some. There's some other concepts that are on the table as well that haven't made it to the point of getting passed through either of the chambers in the legislature. But this one is going to be with us for a while. So the legislature signaled that they're not willing, or they're not interested in just ramming something through quickly. The Senate wanted to get something on the table for real as a negotiating starting point. They have passed the tax cut out of the Senate. Now there'll be a negotiation probably over the next 2 months, and they'll need to reach an agreement by the time they have a budget agreement. And you know, back in the good old days, i.e. the Snyder administration, we got the budgets done by June. The last few years, they haven't gotten done until late September. It's just a function of divided government. These things go slower. It's harder to get to agreements. So but that in this case, there's an incentive that everybody has to get it all settled, tax cuts and budget done by June, because everybody's running in new districts. You know, these lines, the redistricting with the last census have all been redrawn, and everybody's anxious to get out there and hit the campaign trail and introduce themselves to the districts that have different lines and new communities for people to get to know. And of course, the governor's up for re-election too. So you have all of this stuff happening in the background, creates a motivation to get it done maybe a little faster than what we've seen in the last 3 years.
All right. Well, while we're on the topic of taxes, we're just 2 months from tax day, I think, just roughly. But people in Michigan might be waiting a little bit longer for the documents they need to file their taxes, specifically those who were on unemployment last year.
You know, here's something that might be a surprise to some people who are listening right now, that when somebody goes on unemployment, that is taxable income. And so it's a bit of a surprise to people sometimes when they get a 1099 from state government for the unemployment income that you received. And so those are being sent out. Not surprisingly, the state is about a month late in getting their 1099s out. One thing that I was surprised about was when I saw the number of citizens getting a 1099 who had received unemployment insurance benefits in 2021. Because remember, we're talking 2021 here, not 2020. This number would not have surprised me in 2020. It does surprise me in 2021. 1.2 million people. 1.2 million people were at some point in 2021 receiving unemployment insurance benefits. That's a big number. It's about 25% of our overall workforce. So this was a bit of a surprise. You know, I knew the number was big like that in 2020, but the fact that it hit that in 2021 really is something. But we know Michigan did hold on to the extended unemployment insurance benefits all the way through to the last possible day in September that the federal government allowed the longer and larger unemployment benefits to remain in place. So it might be kind of a surprise to workers that they're going to get this 1099 and what it means, because income taxes have not been withheld, or normally wouldn't be withheld or prepaid in this case. So it's going to be in addition to taxable income as they're filing their taxes. So probably in the next few weeks, they'll start hitting mailboxes. They say by late February, they expect those 1099s to be in the hands of those who need it to file their taxes.
All right. Well, while we're kind of on the topic of labor force, one of the things that we saw happen this week was the expansion of the Michigan Tri-Share program. And the Tri-Share program is working to provide access to affordable childcare for workers. And what it does is it splits the cost of childcare between the eligible employer, the employee, and the state of Michigan. So Brian, can you tell us a little bit about the expansion of the Tri-Share program and what that could mean?
This is still kind of in the pilot phase, but it's spreading across more of the state. So now we'll be, when everything's up and running, it'll be in 59 counties. But this is a concept that was pioneered by some business organizations, including SBAM. The Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce was the kind of the lead that put the idea on the table. But the concept is that participating employers could offer as a benefit to their employees childcare, and for those that are 200% of poverty, so increasing the eligibility for state support in childcare by sharing the costs across more parties. The idea is that the employer would pay a third, the employee would pay a third, and then the state would kick in a third for people under certain income thresholds. And the goal being actually getting it up to about 250% of poverty. So really, like a family of four up into the range of over $50,000 of income could qualify for this, and it would help more individuals make that decision to get back to work. So this is still something. It's a concept that needs to be proved out in terms of, is there demand for the benefit. But the idea here is that that there are plenty of people that could work, but just the situation with kids at home, the cost of childcare, availability of childcare is such that they just can't do it. And so we've taken this on as an issue, as one of those things to increase the labor force participation rate, and to do so in a way that it hits a different demographic than the state support has hit before. So before, when you're looking at helping people in poverty, that's good. We want to keep on doing that. But the idea here with childcare is that by doing tri-share, having a partnership between employees, employers, and the state, that we could really expand it out so that that people that have more moderate or middle income ranges could qualify for some support and put childcare in the reach of more of the potential workforce out there. We know that with the labor force participation rate being less than 60% right now, about 59%, that things are really, really tight in finding enough people to make operations go. And there's a bunch of different reasons for that. We know that childcare is one of availability of high quality, affordable childcare is one of those things. So we've taken it on, and we're pleased to see that the initial concept which was pretty small scale in its first round, has been systematically built, and we're hopeful that it ends up being a central or critical piece of the puzzle and helping getting more people to make that jump back into the workforce, and at least get our labor force participation rates to pre-pandemic levels.
And you can learn more about TriShare at michigan.gov/TriShare, so you can see if you are in a participating county. All right. Recently, Enbridge cleared a big hurdle with the Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority. What does that mean for the tunnel project?
We pay really close attention to what's happening with the pipeline and the efforts to shut it down, because we know that the last few recessions sustained high energy costs were one of the contributing factors that caused it. And so we have high energy costs today. And while so far we have economic growth still as well, we don't want to take that for granted. We certainly don't want to do anything to contribute to higher energy costs than we're already experiencing. And so there is a pipeline runs through Michigan, also, including on the bottomlands of the Straits of Mackinac, that moves oil and propane, and both are really important for the overall cost of energy, especially in the Midwestern area. So there have been a lot of legal challenges, but there's an agreement that was put in place in 2018 that would move the pipeline into a tunnel, 100%, a dry tunnel, 100 feet below the Straits of Mackinac through solid bedrock. And the company who owns the pipeline would pay 100% of the cost. That was the agreement in place, law passed, everything, now it's just process. But new administration, new attorney general, and so there's been a lot of legal challenges. Every step of the way has been just a lot of process, a lot of time. And so there's a court, a Mackinac Straits Corridor Authority, which needed to approve the specifications for the bid so they can actually put the bid out to construct the tunnel. And so that was just approved. Pretty big, pretty big milestone, because at this point the project really starts to become real. That they'll put it out to bid. That there'll be proposals for how the tunnel will be constructed, and then that's of course the precursor to actually building the tunnel. Once that is in place, then it really does provide some long-term security without any environmental risk at all of what is today, I think most experts would say, is a very minimal or very small risk. It takes it to zero. I mean, literally in a dry tunnel through bedrock, 100 feet below the lake bed. I don't know how it could be any safer than that. And so this will continue on. We know that, and we already have high energy costs as well. There are a lot of other forces at work that are contributing to that. And it's one of the economic indices out there that, it's kind of like inflation. In the beginning, people said, well, yeah, inflation, but it's not that big a deal. It's just transient. It'll settle back down. So inflation wasn't a problem until it was a problem. High energy costs are one of the things I'm looking at, where, yeah, energy costs are high right now, and we definitely don't want to contribute to higher energy costs, and we would like to revert back to some of the practices nationwide that allow for additional development of domestic energy to get those prices to settle back down. But yeah, I mean, the economy's still going, still growing. So I look at it kind of like, well, yeah, it's still growing until it's not anymore. And once it's not, we don't want to take it for granted. And this is one of the pieces to that puzzle. So there's, it's good news, but some other steps too. The next one will be the Army Corps of Engineers will have to approve a permit. And I've been through that process before when I was in government for the bridge to Canada over from Detroit to Windsor. There's a new Gordie Howe Bridge being constructed. Army Corps of Engineers had to approve that particular permit as well. And it's a very, very thorough process. So I have all the confidence in the world, though, that this project is going to go through, and it will secure long-term the energy, just our Midwestern, especially, access to more reliable energy than what we otherwise would have.
All right, well, thank you for that update. You touched on redistricting earlier when we were talking about the tax bills, but are the maps done? Are the lines drawn? Are we complete with that process?
It does seem like there's a lot of challenges out there, and there are some that are still working through the process. But you remember from previous briefings that I thought that the challenge to the Detroit part of the maps and the Detroit legislators that were in the Legislative Black Caucus that was challenging the maps, I still believe that they had a very, very strong case, but the Supreme Court didn't feel that they presented the argument with enough information to really hear the case. And so they turned it away. The Black Caucus did go back and asked for reconsideration of that decision. It was denied on the same vote, same 4-3 vote as the original denial. And now there are a handful of other challenges. I don't think those other challenges are as strong as this one could have been. And so had it really gone to the full phase of a trial. And so, yeah, I'm thinking that we've got our maps here. There'll be some other steps. There'll be some things that have to be disposed of in court. But for our process of evaluating candidates, who's filing where and who's pro small business, we're just going to lean right into that process now, because I think the maps that we have are the maps that we're going to have for the next 10 years.
And this is where I will do the plug for our exclusive March 1st conversation about redistricting and what that means going forward that we are doing for our VIP and elite members. So email us at sbam@sbam.org if that's something you're interested in attending, and we'll figure out how to make that happen. But I think it'll be a really interesting program. Brian, I also want to talk a little bit about another event we have coming up, which is next Thursday. It's a webinar on our pooled employer retirement program. And I would encourage anyone who might be interested in just learning about a PEP or figuring out if a PEP might be for your company, either because you already have a retirement plan in place, but you might want to switch, or you don't have one and you'd like to beef up your employee benefit offerings. Just attend this webinar next Thursday at 11:30 a.m. It's free to attend, and you might learn some great information that would make you interested in making the switch. So I think that might be everything we have for today. We'll let you get back to your program in the UP there, Brian. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you back here on Monday.
See you on Monday, everybody.